Welcome to the special city council meeting of Monday, November 26th. All councilors are present. Would you please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item number 3, public input. Anyone from the audience wish to address the council? Okay. Item 4, declaration of potential conflicts of interest. Seeing none. Number 6, recognition of Christina Kane Gibson Maine Biz Next Award winner. Manager.
Mayor and council, we were notified a couple months ago that our very own Christina was recognized by Maine Biz. As you know, it's a publication that is produced here in Maine, and it goes out to other states in the area, and I believe even into Canada. And they choose individuals who are kind of the movers and shakers for the state of Maine. And for 2018, they recognize Christina as being one of those that's helping to move not only Caribou, but the region of Aroostook County and beyond into bigger and better things. And so she can probably tell us a little bit more about it. They had a big award ceremony last week. And
actually, that's why I couldn't be with you last week. I was in Portland. I can read to you what I read there. I said that it was an amazing honor, not just for me, but for Caribou and Aroostook County. I said things are changing up north, and I'm excited to be a part of it all. When my husband and I decided to move back to my hometown after being urban for nearly 20 years, we wanted to use our skills to grow Caribou while helping shape its future for our own sons. And we've met a lot of folks like ourselves, people from all walks of life in every corner of the country who are excited to make the possibilities reality. Destination tourism is an essential part of growth and development, and I'm happy to say that Caribou is embracing the strategy. We are successfully highlighting our community as a 4-season, 3-nation destination with cultural and community experiences that are second to none. We are also seeking Main Street status, strengthening business-municipal relationships, seeking new opportunities with Canada and the Aroostook Band of Micmacs, testing new incentives for entrepreneurs, and our list goes on. Stay tuned for more exciting things from Caribou. And I also said that I was really happy to work with a council who is progressive and understands the importance of all these things. And that you guys let me kind of, some of my crazy ideas, just run with them, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much for all you do. And it was just an honor to be recognized by peers and colleagues who nominated me. I have no idea who nominated me. I heard I had 3 nominations, but I don't know who they were. So if it was any of you, thank you. But it's an exciting thing for me, and I think for the city.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
we don't have a fancy plaque. Mayor, do you want to do a picture? So we can send
have
it
a
into
plaque?
there was no plaque that they gave us, but you guys.
We should get it.
I should have brought it. I think they framed our cover. I can come back and take a picture with the
Okay. December 10th.
That's my birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
You still have to come.
Right.
Okay. New business, discussion and possible action regarding River Road reconstruction options. We have Shane McDougall, the engineer that's been working on this, and it's all yours.
So I guess I thought there was more of a question and answer period, but I can certainly go through, what I put together. I think we did that a little bit already, but are there any specific questions on the council direction.
Do you know the underlying cause of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good feeling that it was groundwater. I mean, that's just being trapped and it's going underneath. So there's a lot of water coming off that hill, and it really there's no drainage for that road. So it's hitting that road, it's hitting that old railroad bed, and it's just going, the easiest path that's going to go is down through the ground, underneath the road, and out to the stream.
Is it surface water that's going down, or is there an underground stream there 10, 12 feet down?
Yeah, no, well, for the most part, it's surface water. We only, had 4 borings, so hard to pinpoint a underground river under there, but there wasn't any evidence on the downhill side of anything to that effect. So, I think it's a combination of it's relatively older material and water, just the drainage, very important.
So are we putting culverts in? What are we doing to?
So there were 4 options that we put together, and that we put proposal cost opinions. The first option was to leave the road kind of at its original elevation and build a retaining wall. The second option was to realign that road about 20 feet just to the other side of the utilities, leave it about the same elevation, and no retaining wall, just a riprap slope, at 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 down to where it tied back in. The third option was to realign the road out and around using kind of the old railroad bed. So it's kind of staying away from that failed embankment. It would still require some reshaping and whatnot of that hillside or that embankment. And then the fourth option we looked at was actually just lowering the road vertically. That wouldn't require a wall, require a little bit of riprap slope stabilization. All these options would require drainage improvements. Some would require permitting, some not so much. Some would require utility relocation, others not. So,
my question is, we need to fix the underlying cause before we go put $1 million. Just building a wall is not going to do it.
no,
The water's still going to be coming down.
that's right. Yep, absolutely.
So we need to divert the water somehow.
Yeah, you need to employ stormwater drainage techniques, and that's all built into all those options.
Built into that cost.
Yeah, yeah.
There's another area that seems to be wanting to fail. I think if we're going to do drainage, I think we should do it there also. So I doubt that's in your cost, but we'd like to have an idea. Councilor Terrio, could you?
A little bit further down.
Down,
How long a stretch would you say?
Paul can tell me,
What's that?
the stretch down by Wilcox's,
Yeah.
how
100
long?
feet, 50 feet actually. But it's, the edge of the road is giving way. There's a stream that runs there probably 9 months out of the year, a little brook. And it washed out back in '81 really bad, like 40 feet by 40 feet. And it's starting to show signs of that again. They have put riprap in there, but it's a little scary.
And this is north of the project site.
Number 4 east.
Yep.
Yeah. There's probably a 4-foot culvert there, but that fills up with ice. Over the road she comes, and it'll take the road. It will take the road.
The 4-foot culvert gets full of ice?
It happened a couple years ago. They worked down there for 2 days trying to thaw it out. Yeah.
So I would hope you'd let us know if that is going to happen so that we can
you
thaw it
very
out
close watch
before.
on it.
Thank you. Any questions from the council?
I do. Would option 2 be like Grimes?
Yes.
Okay. And for the drainage, how deep and what kind of drainage how deep would that go? What kind of drainage? Culverts?
So yeah, most of it would be surface drainage, culvert, ditching, all that sort of thing. Because if I can prevent that water from getting into the ground, then it's not going to be there. So get rid of the water. Now, good insurance with any road project, and a lot of projects I do, is under drain, and usually that's at the base of your gravel materials, and that keeps water out of your road gravel, so you're preventing some heaving or possibly heaving. So we wouldn't go down any further than what we would reconstruct that. Unless we saw during construction or during more final design, we saw, an isolated area that needed attention. And that's not uncommon, but nothing that I would suspect.
Do you think that it's going to take care of the whole quarter mile? That, when it started breaking away here and went up the road, because up a little ways from where the major damage was in front of those 4 houses, the guardrails appear to be
Yep.
laying down. And is this gonna, the drainage that would be put in, would this take care of all the way up?
Well, I think that's something that we would look at under final design. I can tell you that this feasibility analysis really looked at that certain section of road that basically started at the Terrios or that field road and went down to the Goves, and that was the majority. Now we looked ancillary around that, but I think I definitely think that in that general vicinity of that, give or take either side, we would want to look at making improvements.
Up towards the farm entrance.
Especially the simple ones like ditching and culverts. I mean, those are simple and easy to do.
When this is put out to bid, what do? Do we have to, you did just a certain, did just a certain portion of the engineering.
So we did a preliminary feasibility study is what we did.
So
Yep.
when this is put out to bid, do we have to come back and hire an engineer to finish off for the construction end of it? Or is that something that whoever gets the bid to do the road work, do they do that in their bid? Or?
Well, let me tell you what we did at Grimes Mill, and you may remember that, but we did a feasibility study just like this, and then after that, the city hired us to do the final design, permitting, and construction oversight of that. So what we would do moving forward with this is do a final design, go out to bid, get a contractor, the low bid, however that works out, however the council wishes to do that, and then start construction in the spring.
What's your timeline? How long would it take Dubois and King to do the engineering so that somebody could get started on the actual construction?
If we start relatively soon, I think we could have bids out in the early spring, March, or even April. So that would be good for bidding season. My concern that I see now is we did a very preliminary survey of the site, and it's not something we would do final design on. So we would need to get somebody back out there to survey. We got another 8 inches of snow coming today, and that's it's possible, but it certainly makes it more difficult as more snow gets dumped on us. So that would be my concern. The other concern with permitting that I'd have to work around and at least talk to the DEP on is the individual NERPA permit usually requires pictures that don't have snow in them, and we're past that. We're kind of past that right now, unless everybody's got some big heaters. But that's something we can work around too. It won't necessarily slow the project down. It may shift the review of that permit. So those are a couple of things that come to mind anyway.
Once a contractor starts, how
long? Depending on which one, I can't. I don't know if we made. So yeah, we made some assumptions here. And these are, relatively large and could be, depending on the contractor and how we do final design. But the stabilized earth wall, we had a 90-day performance period, so a 3-month construction period. And we had a 60-day period for the riprap. I want to say it was about 60 days when we did Grimes Mill.
So they don't need to start in May. They could start in August and have it done.
Yep.
I really would like to see what it's going to look like this spring. But how long can you want to wait?
Well, the drainage has got to be done one way or the other.
Right.
So we've got to take into consideration there's a lot of work being done around here too. So we might want to get the bidding process as soon as possible as well.
Can you design the bid so that the city can help? The condition?
There can be, yep, yep. I mean, we've done that before with other projects.
I mean, to kind of lower the cost, maybe
Yep.
100 or 200,000 or something.
Yeah.
Dave's not here.
Huh?
So Dave's not here.
I mean, Dave would be the one to really, you're talking 100 or 200,000. That would be the resource to use to knock it down by that.
Right, yeah.
But, yep.
Anything else from the council? I've been thinking about, I prefer number 2
I do too.
because further inland we move that, I think, the best. I think we were down to 1 and 2, were we not?
Yeah, and I noticed, did we just, was consensus number 2 pretty much, or
We never did.
we never did?
We narrowed it down to 1 and 2.
Yeah, my choice is number 2.
Anyone else?
Me too. My choice is 1. Because it preserves those properties to be resold, to those customers.
Manager, did you do an analysis of those 2 costs depending on what
They,
keep those properties?
yeah, the cost, I'm just putting it together in a spreadsheet right here so you can see it on the board. These are rough numbers based on the prices that we paid for the properties. So the estimate is that these would be, or the options 1.4 million, 1.2 million, 2.6, and 1.35. And the cost to acquire those properties comes out to about $213,000. The one option of following the railroad tracks, we're going to have to acquire a lot more property and actually cut the Gove property in half and acquire additional right-of-way through there. So this is spitballing a number for how much that's going to cost to acquire all of that additional ground and whatnot. But then, of course, the ability, as you was pointed out, to resell those properties. With each of them, we're not going to get the same amount of money out of it that we put into it, because for one, we'd be tearing down one of those homes in particular. And so in the end, again, just as rough numbers, option number 2 still would come out a little bit cheaper, but it's on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars as far as $100,000 to $200,000 difference. But it really leverages on the ability to, what can we get back out of those properties in the end. Option number 2, you would get less in return for those properties because you are having to tear down those homes, and really all you're selling at the end is what land is left over. But there would also be, and I don't know, Shane, maybe you can answer, that 1.2 million, does that include the demolition costs for the homes that would be in the way?
For number 2,
Yeah.
I believe so, yep. Yeah, I included 15 grand for 3 demolitions.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's almost a wash between the 2, because option number 1 is 140,000. Option number 2, I'm sorry, 1.4 million. Option number 2 was 1.2 million. So the 200,000 difference in the cost, it washes as far as what the property, basically. So
Well, if you look at the last column, it's about $150,000 difference. 120.
So instead of a $200,000 difference, you're looking at a $140,000 difference after being able to return some of those properties back into the sale. And it,
Might have a hard time selling homes too, Mark.
right.
People might be leery of buying there.
Well, are you going to be able to resell the property if there's not a home there?
the land.
Well, that's why I say you're going to get a reduced amount coming back from selling those properties. In fact,
Well, unless there's enough land that somebody could build back.
Well,
Right,
you-
right, but option one retains all 4 homes, so you've got kind of a turnkey property to sell. Option two, you don't.
you have buildable
So,
lots.
so what's the value of that? Of having a turnkey property versus a piece of land that somebody may or may not ever buy?
That's, we're buying it for 213. We're tearing down or getting rid of one of the homes. So you end up with, instead of tearing down 3 homes, you keep 2, and you have a buildable lot that you're trying to sell at the end. So, that mobile home that's on there right now does have a $30,000 value.
The Jalbert property that will be able to be sold. The house,
Yes.
yeah. So you've actually only got 3 properties that would be demolished, and that 4th one would be intact.
Right. So again, these are, rough numbers. We're just talking on order of magnitude here. If we were to, again, if you look at being able to, on option number 1, you're not, the one house, the Terrio house, you're not going to be selling that mobile home again. We don't anticipate. And that's, that's a $15,000, $20,000 value right there. And the ability, because it also comes down to how quickly do you want to get them back on the market. Where we are buying them for fair market value, but if you want to get them back on the tax rolls quickly, do you want to discount those and eat the cost just to get them back on the tax rolls a little bit? That's something else to think about. Otherwise, we may sit on these for quite some time.
And we're not heating them this winter, are we?
We're going to winterize them as best we can.
Shane, what kind of maintenance are we looking at with the wall?
That's a good question. My understanding is they're pretty maintenance free.
You look at some of them around town and you see them falling away, like in
Yeah.
the parking lots and
Yeah, I think
places.
those ones are they're a little less industrial, so to speak. The wall we're looking at is that's like the walls. Those aren't necessarily engineered. The blocks are engineered, and the manufacturer of that product, has literature. This is how you stack it up, but you'll actually have reinforcing with this type of wall system. It's an engineered system. Yeah, you shouldn't see that.
Would that involve buying the properties on the other side of the river?
Well, it's a good. On the other side of the river?
I'm sorry, on the
On the other side of the road.
on this
Well,
side.
I was just thinking of that too. That's another elephant in the room, is that whatever is done, whatever option 1 or 2, that property, the Chomka property, is going to have to be dealt with. There's going to have to be some acquisition there. So that's another, and that's kind of a wild card at this point. I don't think the city has gone after any sort of acquisition on that yet.
The property owners indicate they're not necessarily willing to sell their property, but they recognize that there would be construction work done on their property, and we would probably need to get easements in favor of the city for whatever gets put there. If it's a retaining wall, we need to get easements for the construction aspect of it, as well as the placement of the wall long term. If we don't do a wall and we just grade out the slope, then we want to get a slope easement that places limitations on the property and what they can actually do on the finished product. So there would have,
Puts limitations on who can do, the people that own the property, or just
right,
can't do anything. Now, can they?
right. But
And-
essentially, you're going to be creating a slope that is stable, it's engineered, and it's going to have a finished surface area on it. And you don't want the property owner coming back later on and saying, well, I'm just going to dig into that a little bit here or there. And so almost a third of that property would get occupied with some kind of encumbrance or a restriction on it in either of 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's just something that should be vetted in the process sooner than later, because clearly some sort of easement needs to be gathered for that, and that if need be, I've seen a lot of that stuff go to eminent domain, so it's something that needs to be vetted. I had a conversation with her. She actually called me directly and asked a few questions. She seemed, pretty willing to work with if she got future. She realizes she can't build on that site because there's less than 200 feet from the road to the river. So she physically, I think, per code, can't put a structure up. She knows that. She actually just wanted maybe some improved access. So I think there may be some juggling there, but until someone signs on the dotted line with an easement, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that. So
either way, one or two, you're going to take a third of that?
yeah, give or take. Yeah, I mean a little less with the wall, but you're still going to impact that property.
What's the wall going to be resting on? I mean, you're not going to hit ledge or anything. I mean,
No. They didn't hit any ledge, and they went down 50, 60 feet with their boring. So, no, you build that. You'd over excavate. You'd put gravel, good foundation gravels in, and yep.
So you have faith in that wall?
They do it all the time. I mean, I'm gonna stick to my recommendation on option 2, and the reason I like option 2 is I do get Councillor Kirkpatrick's opinion, but the wall takes a specialty to kind of put up. You can't just go grab some laborers in here and put this wall up. That's not how it works.
You won't be able to use the city most likely.
You won't be able to use what?
Use the city as much.
Yeah, probably not. No. This we've done that before with with the riprap. It's fairly straightforward. General earth contractors can do it. Is that a trade-off? Yeah.
Mayor and council, in the packet, just to draw your attention to it, there's a diagram of what might be involved in the construction of that wall. And you can see this would be the surface of the road as it is now. And in a sense, you would have to excavate down the depth of that wall, put in a good solid foundation for that base level, and then as you go up each tier, you would tie back into the ground so that the ground itself, the weight of the ground, helps support that wall. It doesn't tip over. But every so many feet or every so many blocks up, you would create that anchor back into the hillside. So the wall itself, I mean, from an engineering standpoint, and I'm not an engineer, so can't really say that, but I've seen these done. The ground itself holds the wall in place with the proper tying back into the ground.
What about ice outs in that wall? We have nice ones, but we have some pretty tough ones too. So what about the ice outs?
I was pretty comfortable with the elevations that we saw out there that ice doesn't get up that high.
1994.
There's quite a distance because what happens is that bank comes down, and I could be wrong. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we have those weird years. I mean, we're having one now, right? Mm-hmm. But that bank, that failed slope, came straight down almost. It plateaued for a ways, and then went back down to the river. So there's a shelf there, so to speak, and it's pretty heavily vegetated. So if the vegetation is left down on that lower slope and on that shelf, I don't see that affecting that on that specific area.
What's your preference? Councilwoman Jenna, what's your preference?
Excuse me?
Which of these would you prefer, one or two?
Now that I've heard a more exact definition, I kind of sort of like one myself for the same reason that Mr. Kirkpatrick brought up, that you're not losing that property on the other side of the road and hopefully could get it back on the tax rolls.
Mr. Rowe?
As of tonight, I'm not in favor of any of them. This has nothing to do with I would accept any of them.
Mm-hmm.
But $1.3 million is a lot of money. And there's some options I'd like to see what it looks like this spring. To get an idea. I mean, Sean, this has nothing to do with your work. I'm
No,
not
you-
asking any questions, because,
Nope.
listen, I wouldn't know what I was asking you.
Sure. Yeah, no.
See, and they tell me you're gonna put a stamp on it, and they tell me that that means you guarantee it, and all that, and there's not a guaranteed part of that road
Yeah.
that's ever been built. And I just wanna see what's gonna happen this spring. I'm gonna fix it, and I might come back and ask you again in the spring. So I'm not in favor of any of the options right now, until I see what happens.
And I think to this point, I think everyone realizes that, or I would hope everyone realizes now that, from a taxpayer standpoint, there's a lot of other problems along the river that we see now. And to me, as a city, we need to be actively looking at those now. This was just, this happened, it caught everybody off guard, I think. Grimes Mill Road was an example of that. There's several other issues there that, maybe if some preemptive actions were taken, that we wouldn't be facing 1.3 million. So I think it's something that the city should be looking at hard.
I just want to make this clear. As our budget stands today, we're looking at a $1.5 million increase just on the city side. It's not counting the school or the county government. And I just want to make sure I've explored different options before I get to the $1.2 million. Nothing to do with the quality work you do.
I appreciate it.
Well, I just want to make the
Yep.
people will twist this around.
Oh, yeah.
And I just between you and I.
Shane, from what you know, from what you've seen and what we're doing now, as far as, and there has been a marked increase in traffic since they opened that road. So my question is, what's it doing to the road with the traffic going through there and the condition that it's in? Do you think that it's adding to its deterioration? Do you think that it's gonna withstand the winter?
That's a tough question.
But it's a crapshoot.
It
kinda
is. I mean, we stood out there with the public works director and the city manager, and we looked at it and what's the alternative? What can we do? And I think that's what we all kind of came to the realization. I don't think you're going to do anything worse to that road. I mean, I think the damage is done.
And you're more likely to get frost because it's plowed. If we just let
Right.
snow build on it, it wouldn't freeze, but it will freeze. Whereas in the field, it might not.
Right. I'm just concerned that the longer that we wait and put it off, and then if we can't, we should at least decide the option. And just because we put it out to bids doesn't mean that we have to have them come right away, but we can at least get the steps done so that by spring or by summer, we will know more and we'll have our ducks in a row to get going whenever we decide which way we're going to go. But having lived there for over 50 years on that road, I'm telling you, there's a lot of problems down there. And if this doesn't get fixed and something else lets go, you're going to be building a bridge because there's so many problems there.
Well, that's the concern of $1 million this year and
Right.
$2 million 3 years from now. But yeah,
That's what I wanted to ask. Is there a possibility that if in fact a decision was made and plans weren't made, and we waited until spring, that it could end up costing $2.3 million instead of 1.2? Because we end up with more damage and don't get things going? I mean, it's just a question.
Yeah.
well, at minimum, I would like to see us decide which plan we'd want. And if we wait for spring, because I kind of like waiting for spring to see what happens there, but we could still design the drainage. I mean, any place that it needs it on that road could be started in June or May. I mean, I don't know if you can separate that, or,
Oh, yeah, no, that's, yeah. And again, I'll go back to, I think the damage has been done to that road. I don't think you're going to do any, the only further damage is instead of 1 lane lost, you're going to have 2 lanes lost. But that to me, that's not any severe than what's there now. My concern, actually, my professional concern is when it comes springtime and we get the melt off and the runoff, how's that road going to hold up?
Right.
Don't know. That would be the time that I'd be concerned about people driving on that road.
oh, absolutely, we'll shut it
Yep.
down, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, but what's under there? Is that an old field road that we just tarred, or is that built?
No, it's all on till. There's a good 18 inches or so of gravel underneath that road, or that's what the boring showed. So yeah, it was probably an old field road. Absolutely, like most of the ancillary roads across the town.
Paul?
That road was laid there 11,000 years ago by the Ice Age. Okay, it hasn't moved in 11,000 years. Why it picked this past year, it did let go. Is it going to keep on going? Who knows? It never moved in 11,000 years. But it did move.
I mean, can we move the road 15, 20 feet and just let Public Works put gravel down there? And, I mean, is that something that the city could do, or is it too big?
You're not addressing the drainage.
Oh, absolutely, that's the first thing you have to do.
Yeah. You gotta make sure.
But that's where I don't know what to do, because there are questions.
Yeah, I guess that's where we come in as engineers. We come in to reduce that liability. Where's the liability with just putting gravel down? We could probably talk about that for an hour, but I mean, I think that's really what you're asking is, can we just go in there and throw something down and pave it and maybe be good? Will it stay? Paul brings up a point that it hasn't moved in 11,000 years, and I get that most of it hasn't, but there are certainly local failures on that slope that you can see where that slope has failed in the past, within the recent past, within the last 10 years. So there's nothing there that says it's stopped moving that we saw.
I think, Mayor and Council, what we're looking at is, if we're not going to get it open first thing at the thaw, then we're going to have a time frame here where we need to come up with a fix. What is the design, right? And how is it going to? Are we putting the design out to bid, or do we, in a sense, turn to Dubois and King and say, you've already got all the information right here, continue with the design? And once we've got a final design that we're comfortable with, then we put the actual construction out to bid. But even that, we might be able to say, okay, based on this design, what can we do in-house? Can we turn the homes over to the fire department for exercises and help with some of the demolition that way? Can we have our crews go in and bowl down some things? There's going to be some work that our crews probably just can't do, and we may have to put some of that out to bid. There's going to be a lot of earth movement either way, and so we can certainly look at those options before we go out to bid for the construction work. But you'll also have a more firm estimate from the engineers as to what the cost is going to be based on the list of items that need to be done.
And I think first choice, we should decide on an option. We can at least do that, and then let them get some design work done. Doesn't mean we have to fix the road right away, but we need a direction to go in, and we need to get the drainage. And hey, if City Highway can come in and take some of that property and bulldoze the road, I'm happy as long as I can go. But you got to do it right, because if you don't, then we're just going to be looking at problems.
Okay. And when you start your design, can you design any other spots on that road that need drainage?
Sure. So right now, we have a contract with Dubois and King for the conceptual work, which has been presented tonight and in previous meetings. And so what we can do is, Shane and I could sit down and go over, okay, we're now expanding the scope of work. What is that scope? What's the estimated cost? And we can bring that back to the council for a final approval as far as amendment to that contract, if that's the direction you want to go.
Can I have a motion on the choice of which option?
I would make a motion that we go with option 2.
I second it.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Option 2 it is, 4-3. I think option 2 will allow us to have Public Works be able to do a lot more.
So that's just a selection of the option. Now it's how do you want to proceed?
I would make a motion that you and Dubois and King, you and Shane sit down and work up something, whatever you have to do, and bring it back to us,
Including drainage everywhere.
including drainage.
Second.
That work?
We'll revise a scope of work
Okay.
and a contract and bring it back to you before any design work starts. We'll make sure we're all on the same page as far as what is anticipated.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? 4-3.
Do you have any timeline as to what's gonna transpire when?
I would, well, Shane's got all winter, so he'll have the design done. And somehow I'd like to see the drainage addressed, no matter what we do. That maybe you keep it separate, I don't know. Maybe you can design it so the city can do the drainage, but that needs to be done first, I think.
The time frame will be a part of that contract when it comes back to you. So we'll have dates in that.
Anything else from River Road residents?
Thank you.
Anything else from the council? Okay, hope it works out for us. Item 8B, discussion and possible action regarding an agreement with Wade for provision of ambulance services.
Mayor and council, a couple of weeks or a couple of meetings ago, you approved contracts for ambulance services for Washburn. And the Washburn,
Are you going to go with her? Okay.
the Washburn Select Board got together and they, maybe Chief Susie, maybe you can address this with the council better, but Washburn and Wade basically do the same types of services. And as I understand it, Wade, representatives for Wade opted to also go with Caribou for roughly half of their community being served by Caribou.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. That addressed it. Their select meeting, Board of Selectmen meeting was last week. They met and it was a unanimous vote to pick on Presque Isle and Caribou Fire to we're going to split the ambulance service in their community, just like we split our mutual aid for fire. It'll be an outstanding service for that community, and Wade kind of follows whatever Washburn does for their citizens or town offices in Washburn.
You split geographically or every other?
No, geographically. So we're using the town office as the cutoff line. So School Street, which is right at the town office, and then Hines Street, that'll all be Caribou. Everything to the south of that will be Presque Isle Fire. And of course, we already have mutual aid agreements. So if we're tied up, we'll call them, and if they're tied up, they'll call us. But it's still about a 7 to 8 minute ETA for any of those spots.
From here? That seems fast.
No lights. Once you get going on the Washburn Road, you just go right along. It's not very far.
Turn, that's all.
2. 2 turns.
Okay, discussion?
Is it-
Yes, sir.
Is this a per capita fee?
Yes, sir.
And
The residents of Wade, we did the same as Washburn. So we didn't go house to house. We just took the residents, split it in half. For the 2010 census, we'll charge half. Presque Isle Fire will charge the other half.
what is the per capita fee?
$11.50.
Thank you.
What are the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you. The ad that we have to mandatorily run for Maine EMS will be in the Star Herald on Wednesday. And then there's a 30-day wait period from that people have a chance to respond right back to state government, nothing local. After that, we get the results, and then hopefully January 1st, start operations.
Okay, thank you. Any other business from councilors?
When are we gonna talk about the budget?
We can talk about the budget tonight if you want. If the council wishes.
Per charter, it has to be adopted by December 15th. You have a meeting on December 10th where we anticipated it being on there for adoption, but there hasn't been a lot of discussion from the council. And so
Have you made recommended cuts?
the email that I sent out to you last time showed that we were still needing to find $110,000 roughly. I met with the department heads just this afternoon and we discussed some of those cuts. Right now, I haven't got all those incorporated, but we're looking for $33,000 roughly to get down to the parameters that the council asked us to find.
The 33 gets you to that 110.
No.
No, we were looking for 110 in that email I sent out.
Yep.
And as of this meeting right now, we're looking for 33,000.
So they found 77.
Right. Most of that coming from capital improvement deferments.
Is that close enough for now, or do you want to, do you have some recommendations?
Well, I received an email from Mr. Kilpatrick about some cuts, and I was wondering if we were gonna discuss them. I wanted to discuss how the $70,000 got back onto the budget when I thought the majority of the council said we are up with that senior tax credit. And I thought the majority of the council agreed that we weren't gonna, not that we were against it, but that it wasn't gonna go on this year's budget.
We never voted on that.
You asked for a consensus.
And
I recall people saying that they wanted to take their time, which I took to mean we were gonna direct, I don't mean to put words in people's mouths here, but that we were gonna follow the recommendation of the manager and wait and put it on the 2020 budget. So that we could have time to get our, nobody used this phrase, but to get our ducks in order and understand what it said. You yourself told us when Mr. Kilpatrick was going down and wanted to know about the hospital, that we as a council would do things in a majority format. Clearly remember that night.
well, let's run it through again.
And maybe people have changed their mind, and that's fine. But I just, all of a sudden, I came in last meeting, and there was $70,000.
I remember Councilor McDonough saying, we don't have to go to the voters for this, we can do it ourselves. And I said, you will never do it. And now we have voter approval, and we're still not going to do it. But let's have a consensus, yes.
For the last time, that was a non-binding referendum question.
I understand
If
that.
we decided to go forward with this, would they support? Okay? It's not the will of the people, as you so think, that we're going to put this into effect right now. It was a question. If we decide to go through with this, whichever format we chose, would you be willing to accept the tax increase? All right, that's all. We didn't say we're going to implement this right now, unless I misunderstood the question, and I hope I didn't.
And it stated that the increase would be $500,000, and after the manager went through the numbers, it's how much of a mill? 2/10?
I'd have to go back through it.
Well,
again, some of the
Whatever it was,
changes.
that's not the point I'm trying to make is that we don't need to rush into this, okay? There's no reason why we can't wait until the next budget season to do this and to think it out, put it on paper so you know exactly what you're doing. And in my honest opinion is that you don't need to raise taxes. You got enough you carry over every year to where you could earmark some of that money and establish a reserve account and carry it forward every year what you don't use.
We have 6 months to put this together. How long does it take?
It'll probably take 60 days just to get your ordinance together.
All right, let's vote.
I'm going to make a motion that you don't implement it until 2020.
I'll second that.
Motion to delay this till 2020. All those in favor, discussion? All those in favor? All right, 6-1. There's
Okay.
70,000. Any other business? All right, snowmobiles. Could you tell us how we are reimbursed for grooming of trails?
You are reimbursed through the state municipal grant system. I've got my application in today. They don't want us really going out till there's no set date. There's dates flying around, but there is no set date by the state of Maine. They would like us to wait as long as we possibly can. The unfortunate part is there are people riding. The rail beds are owned by the state of Maine. They would allow us to groom the rail beds. I was down in back of town this weekend, or yesterday, matter of fact, putting signs up behind the warehouse and stuff. Sleds are going through, but they're riding on top of snowbanks and everything else. There is no set trail right now. I would really like to be able to get a trail into town that would service our 13 businesses currently, make it safe for the users. If we would go out right now, without my application being accepted, we're taking a chance of not being reimbursed, but the state knows that we are in the snow belt up here right now. There's a lot of snow on the ground. People are getting very anxious and itchy to go. I would bet, working with the state, we would be able to get reimbursed, but our grant, don't forget, I don't ask for a reimbursement until April, May of after we're done grooming. So this would be money that the city would have to carry out for a while. I would personally volunteer my time to go, and so would my director of maintenance go out and volunteer. He's already mentioned that. With another 8 to 10 plus inches of snow coming tonight and tomorrow possibly, I think winter is here. I don't think it's going to go anywheres. My biggest concern is if we go out early, and then 2 weeks from now we lose it. Then we're going to look like, geez, how come you guys did that? But looking at all the weather patterns and everything, it looks like it's going to stick around. We would not do a lot of grooming. We cannot do all the trails. There's no frost in the ground. Anybody that's working in the ground right now, there's absolutely zero frost. And any of you guys that are trail users, you know that we do cross into some swampy areas, and there is absolutely zero frost. So it would be very limited if we would do anything, if the council still chooses to let us go out and go out and pack the rail beds down, get across town to get to the AVR, be able to get traffic over to Washburn. Washburn has gone out. They've done maintenance. They hauled their drag behind their tractor while they were pushing trees out of the way. So that's why their machine has been out, and that's why the rumors are that they're out grooming. They've only been out twice to do one section to cut trees, and then the other section they did the next day after. So they've been out. We have not been at all. We've been cutting trees. Volunteers have been cutting trees via snowmobiles, and I'm glad to report that both our AVR and our V&A trails are completely free and clear of trees. We had, in the last 3 weeks, we probably had over 40 to 50 trees down due to the high winds and heavy snows. So they're all clear. So it's the wishes of the council, if you guys would want us to go out and get some early business traffic for the businesses of our community. Because there are people coming, there are people traveling. I see trucks and trailers at the park and ride here off of Otter Street over the weekend. They are definitely getting itchy.
Discussion from the council?
Gary, I guess, as I'm shoveling out each Christmas tree one at a time, swearing, I say to myself, at least the hospitality industry is gung-ho. We've sat around and wondered if we'd have snow on Christmas vacation. And here I'm saying to myself, they're going to get Thanksgiving vacation in. These guys have got their 1 in a 20-year gift. And I don't know anything about snowmobiling, but I didn't know that they set a date for when you get reimbursed. I can only, after that you do whatever you'll do in your line of work. But I would hope this summer that the industry get together and get to the legislators and let them know that we'd like a little more control over when we can groom our trails. Not that we want control, but that you will accept our suggestions, because from what I've been hearing is, yeah, it's great if Caribou goes and does it, but what happens if Presque Isle doesn't, and you're bringing people up here, and half our system is not up to snuff, where if everybody was getting reimbursed, I'll bet you everybody would be.
Oh, they would be.
It's all about this reimbursement thing. And I find that to be the wrong way to drive this industry that's so important to us. It should be driven from the bottom up. I'm not a snowmobiler. I've got no dog in this fight other than I want to see people prosper. So I got to look to the snowmobile industry, and if you think you're going to go down there and be diplomatic and get anything, someone's got to be a bummer about this and go down and let things fly. That's my suggestion.
Yep. The state has big landowners in the western side of the state, AFM, huge landowner, that do not allow them snowmobiles till the 15th of December due to hunting and then muzzle loading is right now. So, but up here, Irving has never regulated, to my knowledge, gates to open up for snowmobiles. Prentice and Carlisle, neither. Seven Islands, neither. So our landowners up this area are a little bit easier to get along with than the ones that they deal with downstate, which are a little bit more political. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've never seen any of our landowners, and we have about 130 of them that we deal with, say no. There's hunting, you got to stay off. And again, I hear you, Councilor Don. I cannot get to all of the restaurants, and I cannot get to all of the hotels at this moment.
No.
Because of swampy areas. But if we could say, hey, we have done the rail beds, we've gone across town, and if you choose to stay at the Caribou Convention Center, you can travel to the park and ride, unload, like they do in early season riding anyways. I could get to Russell's. I have no swamps there. Crown Park Inn as well. I have no swamps. The Motor Inn is in an area of, and it's not just the Motor Inn. It's the Motor Inn, now Northern Maine Brewery, which has become a big draw for Caribou, and Mike's Quick Stop. I can't get there due to wet grounds. But 85% of our businesses could get covered right now. So again, and I don't know in all the business of the TIF district, Manager Marker. I know that there's been talk that, maybe not this community, but I know there's other communities that are using some TIF monies for recreational trail use and grooming. I don't know where that underlies for us. That would be something that, you know, I think you have a better handle on the TIF side of things than I do. But again, I'm all about getting businesses and business to the businesses, and as you guys can tell, we've been working for the last couple months off of Route 1 to obtain a new access to get into town, which is going to be pretty much as permanent as we could possibly be permanent. I've been asked by a business owner to get off of their property, and it's been a year working with the DOT to get access across Route 1. So if you guys think that the Burger King entrance is a new driveway to Burger King, it is not. It is a trail entrance. So there is a sign that has a snowmobile placard on the stop sign off of Route 1 because people are going to think it's going to be a road. And yes, our snowmobile trails are sometimes better than our roads in town. I can say that because Dave's not here. So,
I make a motion we allow Gary to groom the trails. Early.
Can I ask a question of Mayor Martin first? Because you're an avid snowmobiler.
I am.
What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Early, if they can open up
There've been
now?
enough sleds on there now that there's a base.
It's going to be a lot
And
safer
and
for
if you,
people with
if you
trails.
can't- if you level that base and let them ride, it's gonna, I mean, you can tell the snowmobile trails there, 2 weeks after the snow's all gone, the trail's still there. That's because it's been packed.
and I've seen times before in the last couple of years it's happened. We're pretty well proactive when it comes to grooming in Caribou. We've had one winter where if you looked at any ribbons, it was just a white ribbon because that's where we were. There was no snow on the edge of the trails. And somebody from our southern community asked me, they said, why are you guys out grooming? I said, well, you listen to the weather, you put that edge, the edge of snow there, and if the wind catches that, that's free snow because drifted snow is a free snow. We built snow up that whole winter, and I don't believe we had any measurable snow for like 4 or 5 weeks. We were kept building because the wind never stopped, and it would catch, and it makes a difference. So if we can capture that edge, and every time the wind blows, it builds up. So it builds a good base, and Councillor Jarrett hit the nail on the head. It's a safety issue. Right now, everybody's running right down the edge, right down the middle.
It's now they'll stay on the groom trail.
Well, they'll stay on the groom trail, and I'm not talking about going out and doing everything. I'll do what I can. This new snow's going to come tonight, it's tomorrow.
Are gates open? The gates
There's no
open?
gates.
Gates are open.
All gates are removed.
Oh,
They
yeah?
have been removed for 5 years.
Why are the posts still there?
Guess they
It
put
has
them
signs
back.
up. There's no posts. There's no gates.
Gary, I have a
I've
question.
got 2 gates on private property that I've been told to have.
Have you ever not been reimbursed in recent memory? So,
They've always got
so you potentially could
because
be reimbursed.
I'm-
It's early, but you
because-
potentially could be reimbursed.
Oh, yeah, because I'm going early. The state doesn't like it because I'm not approved, but it's the wishes of the council, and
Oh, I made a motion.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous?
Go right now.
Chop chop.
Yeah, I'm Gary.
Discuss more budget?
Well, yes, at December 10th, if we don't have to vote on, I'd like to be able to put my thoughts together, yeah. I didn't see anything on the agenda, and I was just wondering when we were going to do it.
Well, no, but if we're not in agreement or close to it, we probably should discuss it before the deadline. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was my point of asking, when are we going to talk about it?
Okay.
Okay.
So, right now, we're at our 3%?
You'll be better than your 3% because of that
Less than
70,000.
3%, which was your initial guideline from the council. Had you agreed to that? Yeah, you said you agreed with me for once.
Grab your check. Yeah, I did. And then we saw some other numbers come through that I saw what Mr. Kilpatrick emailed us, and I'm thinking, at that has merit, at least for discussion.
Okay, there were 4 items on your email. What were, one was, do not buy the streetlights,
Yeah,
but I think we should buy the streetlights.
well, I could change my mind on that. That's just based on kind of what we know now.
Right.
Just based on what we know now, I don't think it's a good idea, but we're gonna find out more about that. Maybe that will turn out to be a good idea. Right now, I don't think it is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And so I guess if I can come back a little bit, remember that this is the expense budget, and if the numbers are not in the expense budget, you can't amend it after it's adopted, which was part of my understanding from the last discussion about the whole 70,000 was that, well, if it's in the budget, you don't have to spend it, but at least it's there. But now I can definitely take it out because that's of that direction. But the same thing with the purchasing of the streetlights. If we, for the most conservative thing to do for the budget would be to say we're not going to purchase it and plan for the extra $50,000 in electricity costs. But that's where we've got to look at, if it looks like we're going to really do this, that's what's enabling us to come down to the threshold where we're at right now, is we spend the 20,000 plus what's in the reserve right now to purchase those lights. Of course, we have to get all the details on it, but the potential savings long term is what enables us to bring the budget down where we're at right now. And we'll get more details on that.
I guess one of the questions I would have is say you put it in there, we didn't buy it. What keeps that from getting spent on something else?
Us.
It would only be in that protection fund, and the only coding that we do out of that is for streetlights. If it's going to move from this fund to this fund over here, we've got to bring that back to the council and get your approval.
That's in a capital fund, right?
Yes.
Street lights are in the capital fund?
Yes.
Okay, so that funding can only be used for that project unless, like the manager said, it's decided that it's not going to be used and you want to put it someplace else. Or if it sits dormant for 3 years. So there's your control there.
Understood.
The other item that you brought up about the front end loader with Public Works, I talked to Dave about that this afternoon. There are other pieces of equipment that he said that can be deferred to future years, such as the 15-foot batwing mower. Says that's something that he probably doesn't have to get this year. That was estimated at, was it 25,000? Let me pull it up. And so, 24,000. So Dave said he doesn't have to do the batwing mower this year, but the 3.5 yard loader is something that is a must-have for 2019. They already replaced the transmission in it about 9 years ago, and it only has about a 10-year life. And the cost they said they spent about $90,000 just to fix the transmission last time. And so rather than knowing that that's going to be coming up real soon, it's better. Dave's recommendation is to go ahead and fund the new $210,000 loader, but a good portion of that, about $74,000 of that, would come from reserve money that's already been put in place for major capital equipment purchases. Plus, they're anticipating a trade-in on a vehicle of $15,000, so there's $90,000 going toward that.
I guess, Matt, I guess I'll raise my hand first.
Nobody's saying anything, so you're not interrupting.
I guess I was thinking about talking about the budget. Was also interested in thinking, and I did not know that we had just eliminated the
77 plus 7.
whatever that deal is. So now, I'm just ballparking, so now we're looking at $1.25 million increase in our mill rate, based on our expenses of this coming year. And I guess I wanted to hear from each of the council what their opinion was on that philosophy of that we were going to raise the mill rate $1.25 million, not counting county and school budget. And we know the school budget's going to have, I don't know when, but sometime they're going to put something in there about this bond.
Right.
And that's going to cause things to go up.
And if I might interject, the council has talked about on multiple occasions using past unexpended reserves to help offset the mill rate. And at this point, this budget, we haven't even touched any of that unexpended reserve. And so there is still a possibility that, yes, this is the expense budget, and it's coming in lower than what you've asked, but we can also dip into those unexpended reserves from the past to help also offset those adjustments.
See, this hits a nerve with me because if we have this unexpended reserve, and this is the kind of conversation I like, then why do we have to dip in the highway department, the high street repair line, to pay for those homes? Why didn't we take money from this everyone keeps talking about this unreserved fund, like, and I can't find, where is it? Where's this number that I'm trying to find that we can actually go tap into and nobody has their name written on it? See? And instead we took it out of the High Street Fund, and now that got turned into an all-purpose account for road construction and stuff like that, when I know for a fact that when last time that account was strictly supposed to be for High Street. But that's what I reference. So why can't we then take those unreserved, reimburse the High Street deal, so that we don't have that on the CIP this year? You know what I'm saying? This is the kind of discussion that I'd like to have, because of $1.25 million increase, not counting those other two things, and it's not counting this new public safety building.
Right.
I'd like to have a better I'd like to have a better understanding of where all this unreserved money is and how much it is. These are the things that I think we haven't dug deep enough in the process of this budget cycle for me to understand. I know everybody else understands it, but if you can get through to me, I think you can get through to everybody.
And those are good questions, and certainly we can bring all this information at our next meeting and have it all at our fingertips.
I think I can answer part of that, or is that what you're going to do?
I was going to venture there.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, at the end of the year, we have what we call undesignated funds that aren't identified, and we roll them over and they go into the general fund every year. And it's kind of sort of like reserve. It's not identified. You have, according to state law, the ability to establish a rainy day account, such as you're speaking, specifically for those purposes, like the Grimes Road and so on and so forth. So you have an avenue to travel. It's actually what you would have to consider emergency legislation, because you're overexpending your expense budget, which we've done. So at the end of the year, we'll make up those differences out of the undesignated balance. But if you identify a certain portion of your undesignated fund balance to go into a reserve account, then you have that rainy day funds. Okay? If not, it's just going to sit in the general ledger, and we're just going to pick away at it. And did we or did we not last year take, I got to get the years right, 2016's carryover to use to pay down the 2018 budget, because we didn't really know where we would be with 2017, and we would use 2017 this year for 2019.
In a sense, yes, it was, the years were different, but yes, we used past years'
Okay,
unexpended
all right,
funds
so-
to help offset the mill rate increase.
So it didn't go into an unreserved. That's my point. I'm confused because, yes, if you took those funds and put them in this unreserved fund, I could find it. But we didn't. We took them and used them to offset next year's operation. Is that not correct? the $450,000 that we had left over from last year.
We haven't touched those yet.
That's the account. I need to have defined to me a couple paragraphs.
Line 600 in the budget.
We'll bring it for you.
Every year when we set the budget, there's an what do we call that? Overlay. Okay, and that's, last few years, it's been, say, around 100,000. The rest of the money you're talking about comes from every department that had 100% allocated to it, but spent 95 or 96 or 97. So all those monies were allocated, but they weren't spent, and that usually ends up coming up to 300,000 or 400,000 or 250,000. So, yeah, most of it is assigned to the departments, and what they don't spend till the end of December is where most of that money comes from.
Okay, my impression was that last year we had $450,000 between the expense and the income. You add them together, and we had a total of, I'm rounding things off, $450,000. I thought when we went through the formula last May or June, we took that $450,000, because we had a gap.
It was almost the same amount of money from the previous year. So we had, like you said, throwing out numbers, 450,000 last year.
Okay.
And we had almost 450,000 the year before that.
Okay, okay.
And so,
And what are we gonna have in 2019? Or 18, excuse me. What, this is, yes, I agree, 451 year, 450, it's been this rolling thing, and as long as it keeps rolling, we're all right.
Summary sheet.
But what is it this year that we're gonna have between the expense and the income?
we won't actually know until the end of the
What
year.
are the numbers you gave me the other day were only like $100,000.
Right. It shouldn't be as much as
We're
it has been in the past.
350 short of that rolling number.
No, it's not a guaranteed number. It's just that it came out to that in those years.
And as the budgets get tighter, yes, that amount will go down.
It's a where the chips fall number, so to speak,
Right.
at the end of each year.
But ideally, you should be budgeting what you're really going to expend. You shouldn't have such a big,
Ideally, yes.
not over budgeting.
Right.
Correct.
It,
Can, the overlay, when we establish that, that's basically for abatements during the course of the year. At the end of the year, if there's anything left over, that would end up in the undesignated fund balance also. So that has a separate use. And I don't want to confuse it with the reserve until it's actually put in there.
Then I'm wrong. So I guess I wouldn't mind a conversation before we pass this year's budget as to what this council thinks, how much of those reserves should come out that would impact what is concerning me, a 1.25 mil increase. Not that it's ironed in stone, but I just like to hear what people think before I vote on a budget that looks like it's gonna cost us $1.25 million. I don't care about the school. I do, but not for this purpose. I don't care about the county. I do, but not for this purpose. I'm talking this 1.25 mil increase it looks like we have.
Well, historically, we've used, and we have 450,000. That takes care of your $1.25 million. Now, next year, if we're in the same boat, we'll only have 100,000.
Mr. Marker made it very clear in one of his discussions, the council over the next 2 or 3 years has some hard decisions what to do. And with our debt load of our infrastructure and things like that, you made that nice graph. I got it. Made sense to me. You made a point that we have to make some hard decisions. And I say, why wait until next year's council or the year after's council? Why can't this council make the hard decisions and start to make the hard decisions right now? That's my point. And that's what I want to hear a discussion. I'm personally in favor of the lights, just to let you know, the more the merrier on the lights. But there was a few things he mentioned. But I don't want to get too much in the weeds because that's what I view as administration's job. I'm looking from the philosophy standpoint.
Well, right now, we asked them to cut, and they cut capital. They keep cutting capital
Yeah,
improvements. And I don't want to see us get to the point where, oh, this town needs a new fire truck. Now they're looking around to raise funds, do this, do that. I mean, I think Kevin's done a pretty good job of maintaining this stuff because we save every year for that stuff. I mean, what you're talking about is, do we need this program? Do we need that program? Do we need that program? Because everything else, at this point in time, the only place we have money is in the capital improvements, and that's been cut quite a bit already.
Well, and that's true. And I'll accept that, but I ran for this position based on the fact that I believed in zero-based budgeting, where you literally do go in and assume a department isn't needed. Now, that's not true. I get it. But you start from zero and you do one or two departments a year. And you do go through a process whereby you see how things, different services can be delivered at a different, you want the services, I'm not saying that, but can we, in the process, can we deliver the same or better services for less money? And it's that process that you go through that I've been striving for years to try to talk about with fellow counselors. No one's going to cut any department. That's not, it sounds that way when you say zero-based budgeting, but that's not true. But you have to have some assumptions when you go into it. But I don't know, I've felt over the last 3 or 4 weeks that we just really haven't, I don't know what Nicole thinks on the budget. And I'd like to hear what Nicole thinks on it. And I'd like to hear what Timmy and Joan and on the whole concept of the mill increasing of this community and the graph that he showed us and the debt that we see coming down that road. And I want the people out there to hear us talk about it. That's what I think I'm missing. Wow, I got long-winded on that one. But.
Anything else?
I have one item, if we might. My understanding was that council would like to defer the biweekly payroll for a year. We're not saying we're not going to do it, but defer it for a year. Would the council be willing to make that a formal motion so we can have that on record that way?
I move that we defer the 2-week pay program until 2020 budget year.
Second.
Discussion.
And then we can look at it again, maybe.
All those in favor? Pass. Favor?
No.
Opposed?
So under that motion, then, we'll act accordingly. Any union negotiations here to move forward, that's the direction the council would like to go.
Do you have anything new on negotiations for us?
Not tonight.
Any other business? Next meeting, regular meeting, December 10th. Mr. Jarrett, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?